Well, the billboards feature the image of the Nativity scene and are focused in areas where there are large Christian populations. Are the atheists evangelizing? Here to debate are Nick Fish, National Program Director for the American Atheists, and Dr. Frank Turek, author of I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist. Welcome to you both.
Good to be with you.
Hey, Lauren.
Okay, Nick, I want to start with you first because it seems that you are essentially evangelizing. You're trying to convert people to what you believe. I mean, like, why else would you put up those billboards?
Well, so the main reason to put up the billboard is to spark a conversation. And if you want to call that evangelizing, sure. But we want to get our foot in the door. We want to spark a debate. We want to have a spirited debate like we are right now. And we want to have that in communities where people just aren't thinking about that enough, where they're not talking about it, where atheist voices aren't being heard, where the assumption is that everybody is the same.
But why take the image of the Nativity? You don't think that would offend people?
Well, so the issue isn't being offended. The issue is, again, getting our foot in the door and getting people talking about it. And so the only way to do that sometimes is to be provocative, to raise an eyebrow. And, you know, there's a difference between saying, we want you to think critically about your religion and we want you to think critically about what's going on and what your preacher is telling you, and threatening me with eternal damnation. You know, there's a little bit of an imbalance there in what people see as offensive, which I think is really an interesting thing to discuss.
Dr. Frank, what do you think?
Well, the question is, what is true? Is it really true that there's a God or not? And I think there's great evidence there is. In fact, let me just make two quick points, Lauren. One is, even atheists are admitting that space-time and matter exploded into being out of nothing. Now, if that's the case, whatever created space-time and matter can't be made of space-time and matter. In other words, the cause must be spaceless, timeless, immaterial, powerful, personal in order to choose to create, and also intelligent because the universe is fine-tuned. Now, when you think about a spaceless, timeless, immaterial, powerful, personal, intelligent cause, right from the creation of the universe, you have a being called God. So if this God exists, miracles like the virgin conception are possible because the greatest miracle, the creation of the universe out of nothing, is possible, or it actually did occur, which means lesser miracles like a virgin conception and even a resurrection from the dead is possible. And the second point is resurrection really occurred. Otherwise, there would be no such thing as Christianity. There would be no such thing as a New Testament. Remember, the writers of the New Testament, the exception were Jews. They already thought they were God's chosen people.
They had no motive to invent a resurrected Jesus, so there would be no Christianity. There would be no Jesus' celebration of his birthday, unless he actually rose from the dead, and that's what Christmas is all about. So it's the farthest thing from fake news. It really happened.
But Dr. Frank, I wanted to, are you offended by these billboards?
No, I'm from New Jersey. I'm not offended by anything. So it's just fine that they're doing this. It is bringing up a conversation. So I actually appreciate them saying, hey, let's talk about this. I know some people will be offended, but look, we live in America. We have free speech. You don't have a right not to be offended.
All right, so but the idea that you're trying to get a conversation going, but are you more worried about someone telling you, Nick, that you're going to hell? And I mean, because he's not really telling you that at all, and he's actually just saying, hey, you know what, you have a right to do this, but, you know, he's giving you more facts and more information.
Well, sure, he's giving me more information. I don't know if he's giving me more facts or not. But, and even though Dr. Turek isn't threatening me with hell right now, I mean, that's the centerpiece of the religion. I mean, that's part of the game. You can't take the good without the bad.
I don't think that's part of the game. I really don't think that's part of what Christianity is all about.
I don't know that it's what it's all about, but it's certainly
I think that if you've never been really exposed to the real, you know, understanding of the gospel, you don't get that message. And that's what I'm kind of like understanding is that perhaps you're getting the wrong message. And I want to bring Dr. Frank in here because I think he can address that more. So, you know, Frank, why is it that Nick would feel as if Christianity is all about hell and damnation?
Well, I didn't say all about, just to be clear.
Just to be clear, but you're
not saying it's all about.
But the bulk of the message that you're getting from Christianity is that you're being condemned.
It's not the bulk,
in some way.
though. But it's.
But why would you bring that up if it's not the bulk?
Well, because it's so outrageous and it's so just beyond the pale to talk about eternal torture for finite sins,
okay,
right? That's the issue.
Okay, but
nowhere in the Bible does the Bible talk about torture. It talks about torment, which is self-inflicted. Look, God won't force you into heaven against your will. If you don't want him now here, you're not going to want him in eternity. So God gives you a free choice. You can either be with God, that's heaven, or you can be separated from God, that's hell. Now, the beauty of Christianity and the beauty of Christmas is that God literally put human flesh over his deity to come and save us from that, so we don't have to go and be separated from him. And all you need to do is trust in him, because what he's done on the cross is save me and save you from our sins if we want it. But if you don't want it, that's fine. God will leave you alone in eternity. That's what hell is.
Tonight, we're hearing from that sergeant and getting a look at the amazing video. Eyewitness News reporter Greg Argos has the story.
On December 2nd, Sergeant Michael Verga with the Hamilton Township Police Department was working the overnight shift.
I was just patrolling the neighborhood
when he decided to turn down Drosera Avenue,
trying to keep the neighborhood safe.
Minutes after 3 in the morning, pitch black, this road has no lights, when suddenly a flash in the sky and the sergeant's dash cam captured everything.
When you're on patrol or on the shift, you tend to see some strange things from time to time.
But this streak was something different.
Trying to process exactly what I was looking at.
What you actually were able to see was a meteorite entering Earth's atmosphere.
Michael Maley with the Franklin Institute says the fireball was caused by the reaction between the air, the speed that meteorite was traveling, and what it's made out of.
The heavy materials, mostly iron and nickel, coming into contact with the Earth's atmosphere, moving at incredibly high speeds, causing a fireball across the sky.
And though it looked like it was near the sergeant,
I didn't hear any noise, which I would probably associate with it actually striking the ground here.
It likely was thousands of miles away and fully disintegrated before it hit Earth. But it did leave behind more than a memory for Sergeant Verga and his department.
I've never seen anything like that before in my entire life.
An emergency session of the UN Security Council has been held over Washington's decision. And during the meeting of the 15 members, it was 14 united against just one, that of the United States.
We regard East Jerusalem as part of the occupied Palestinian territories. We therefore disagree with the US decision to move its embassy to Jerusalem and unilaterally to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel before a final status agreement.
Nous regrettons.
We regret the decision announced by the President of the United States to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel.
We clearly disagree with the recognition of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel.
The Arab Republic of Egypt denounces the U.S. decision to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel.
China is highly concerned about the recent developments regarding the status of Jerusalem.
Moscow met Washington's decision with serious concern.
However, the U.S. envoy to the UN, Nikki Haley, attacked the United Nations itself, accusing the global body of bias against Israel.
Over many years, the United Nations has outrageously been of the world's foremost centers of hostility towards Israel. The UN has done much more damage to the prospects for Middle East peace than to advance them. We will not be a party to that. The United States no longer stands by when Israel is unfairly attacked in the United Nations. And the United States will not be lectured to by countries that lack any credibility when it comes to treating both Israelis and Palestinians fairly.
The day was just getting started inside Aztec High School when gunfire erupted.
And as soon as we hear the second gunshot, it shoots through my classroom and busts a window through the wall.
The Northwestern New Mexico school is nearly 200 miles from Albuquerque. The shots rang out. Students quickly took cover.
The next thing we knew, our teachers are yelling for us to get in the closet right now, and that it was gunshots.
Authorities say 2 students were shot and killed.
Something like this, it hits you in the heart.
We do have a possible suspect in the 800-900 building, second floor.
The suspect also died, but investigators are not yet saying how. Nervous parents gathered outside City Hall looking for information and waiting to reunite with their kids. A rural, tight-knit community, now the latest scene of a deadly school shooting.
So some controversy today from Pope Francis that has people sort of turning their heads a little bit on this one. The leader of the Catholic Church suggesting that the Lord's Prayer, the best-known prayer in Christianity, which is prayed by not thousands, as I said earlier, but 2.2 billion people around the world, may undergo a little bit of an edit. He says the phrase, "lead us not into temptation," suggests that God induces temptation in his followers, and do not let us fall into temptation would be more acceptable and closer to the original meaning of the prayer.
We are in East Jerusalem at Damascus Gate. Behind me is actually Damascus Gate, and behind that wall is Jerusalem's Old City, which is a maze of small alleys and streets. We were in the Old City this morning to cover Palestinian demonstrations against President Trump's recent statements, and while we were there, we found ourselves in the midst of an Israeli crackdown. Clashes this morning over Jerusalem in Jerusalem. The fighting broke out as Palestinians left the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem's Old City. Palestinians tried to demonstrate, but Israeli security forces were ready for them. Police have moved in quickly to break up the protests. They are not allowing the protesters to move out of the Old City, breaking up the demonstrators with force, pushing and shoving down the narrow alleys. The Israeli security forces are trying to prevent people from gathering, trying to prevent them from reaching the main street, trying to break up the demonstration. But before they're able to congregate, but the Palestinians, this is their way of showing that they don't accept the Israeli claim to Jerusalem. Zero tolerance for protests. Why? Palestinians want this old city and its mosque to be the centerpiece of their future capital. But President Trump seemed to rule that out, backing Israel, which claims all of Jerusalem as its own. And this isn't just a battle over real estate. For many Muslims, this is an issue of faith and justice. Across the Islamic world, the Al-Aqsa Mosque is revered. Protests have spread to Turkey, Pakistan, Jordan, and other nations where many believe President Trump is trying to give control of an Islamic holy site to Israel, a move they say they'll fight. There have been other clashes this morning in Jerusalem and other Palestinian areas in the West Bank. We spoke to Israel's police spokesman. He said that extra security forces have been deployed here in Jerusalem. He wouldn't say how many, but said it's enough to contain the situation.
It's been nearly 4 months since Hurricane Harvey, and much of southeast Texas is still getting back on its feet. First Lady Melania Trump and Second Lady Karen Pence got an up-close look at the situation. They met with first responders and struggling families, acknowledging the strife, but urging storm victims to focus on what they still have.
You serve as a reminder to all of us that the best gifts are those of family and friends, love and kindness.
The head of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention was also in the region Wednesday. She met with local public health officials and stopped by a mobile wellness unit tasked with providing services like free immunizations and cleaning supplies. At the same time, thousands of people still have no clean drinking water.
I've been flooded out before, but this was really a journey.
Plenty of people are still living in tents. The possessions they managed to save piled up around their makeshift homes. Bathing requires using a community shower with water coming from a garden hose. For parents like Petra Cervantes, every day is a struggle.
Sometimes I don't want to come back home.
With cold weather on the way, volunteers are handing out blankets and winter gear. They're hoping storm victims will not lose their resolve.
The sun is shining again, and they just don't realize how long this process is. This is not an overnight fix.
A delegation from Houston will be in Washington next week. They'll press for more funding for flood mitigation and recovery.
Back with the Fox News alert, the governor of California asking for President Trump's help as raging wildfires intensify with no apparent end in sight.
More than 5,000 firefighters are battling those flames, battling all the fatigue to protect the lives and
the winds
homes.
have stayed calm, but we had new evacuations in this this area overnight because of the fire behind me. You can see it really looks more like a volcano right now with hellish smoke that's shooting up into the air. Now, when the winds pick up later today, we want to show you exactly what it's like to be on the front lines. Take a look. These flames have raced down this hillside in just the past couple of minutes. They're being fanned by the fierce winds we've had throughout the course of the day, and you can see that they are eating everything in their path. Now, the reason this is such a concern is because on this side of the Pacific Coast Highway, you have a number of beach homes. You can see just how close all of these flames are. There are firefighters on the other side spraying these down, trying to do everything that they can to protect this community. Those firefighters have been working round the clock. We spoke with one resident whose home has been surrounded by flames twice this week. Listen to what he said.
We're very, very grateful for the fire department and all the fire departments from up and down the state and out of state. They're all here helping us. We never dreamt it would be back here again. We thought we were safe last night.
North Korea reportedly wants to talk with the United States to guarantee its security. This was the clear message relayed on Thursday by Russia's foreign minister to his U.S. counterpart, Rex Tillerson. Our Park Jong-hong with the details.
While North Korea is talking tough about a war with the U.S., it is apparently looking forward to dialogue with Washington. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov says North Korea wants to sit down with the U.S. to seek guarantees on its security. He was quoted by several sources as passing on that message to U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson in Vienna on Thursday. The two met on the sidelines of a ministerial conference of the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. Lavrov said Russia is ready to support North Korea's dialogue with the U.S., adding that it's willing to help facilitate such negotiations. Meanwhile, Russia's foreign ministry said Tillerson and Lavrov agreed that Pyongyang must thoroughly abide by the UN Security Council resolutions. This comes after North Korea blasted the U.S. on Thursday for the large-scale combat drills taking place over the peninsula, saying the exercises are, quote, confrontational warmongering that makes a war inevitable. On its state-run news channel, North Korea added that, quote, it does not wish for a war, but it will not hide from it. Responding to the tension, China's foreign ministry spokesman urged all parties to stay calm and to refrain from provoking each other. He said a war would benefit neither side and would threaten the lives of many people. Against this backdrop, China has sent a special envoy to the U.S. to discuss North Korea-related issues. Beijing's Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs, Zheng Zheguang, is set to meet with Matt Pottinger, the head of Asian Affairs at the White House's National Security Council.
According to the Korea Herald, South Korea is planning to arm its newly formed Special Forces unit, known as the Decapitation Unit, with suicide drones and other lethal weapons to take out North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. On Wednesday, the South Korean Defense Ministry announced that the Decapitation Unit was allocated $310,000 for the weapons and equipment. An anonymous Defense Ministry official told the Herald that the unit will receive $24 million altogether. The Defense Ministry official told the Herald the equipment includes suicide drones, surveillance drones, and grenade machine guns.
We're back now with a shocking and deadly police shooting caught on body cam. The video released just hours after a jury found the former officer involved not guilty for fatally shooting an unarmed father in an Arizona hotel last year. NBC's Morgan Radford has details and a note some may find these images disturbing.
You do that again, we're shooting you. Do you understand?
For several minutes, 26-year-old Daniel Shaver crawled, cried, and begged for his life.
Please do not shoot me. Then listen to my instructions.
Body cam video shows the moment Shaver, unarmed, was shot and killed by police.
Crawl towards me. Crawl towards me. Don't
The incident happened in a Mesa, Arizona hotel in January 2016. But police released the footage Thursday, just hours after the officer who shot him was found not guilty of second-degree murder and reckless manslaughter.
Second-degree murder, not guilty.
Police had responded to reports of a man pointing a rifle out a window.
Clear.
But the police body cam footage shows the moment Shaver's hand moves here, seemingly toward his waist. Former officer Philip Brailsford told jurors he thought the father of two was reaching for a gun.
When movements were made that are consistent with drawing a weapon, you have 1 second to make up your mind.
Shaver did not have a gun on him. He was intoxicated and did have a pellet gun in his hotel room related to his pest control job. Shaver's widow now has a $75 million wrongful death lawsuit against the city of Mesa and the police after losing the man she calls the love of her life.
He was my husband and my kid's father, and now all that's left of him is this.
Delaware tonight, an earthquake just hit outside Dover, and people in several states felt it, including right here in our area. Lonnie Quinn here with more. Lonnie.
Yeah, about 4:45 this afternoon, the earthquake hit outside of Dover, Delaware. Here's the deal. I've got an update for you, because at one point it was reported as a 5.1. Now, that would be very big for this area. It's now been adjusted by the U.S. government, and they're saying, no, the number is a 4.4 on the Richter scale. Still large for our area. Now, our area has a fault line that runs right through it. It's the Ramapo fault line. I've outlined it here in red for you. So it cuts through sort of northern and central New Jersey. This area gets a tremendous amount of earthquakes and earthquake activity. I mean, I'm talking almost monthly, but they're tiny. They're 2.0 or smaller. A 4.4 is out of the ordinary. It's also 75 miles from the fault line itself, so that's quite a distance. About 50 miles from Philadelphia, about 125 miles from New York City, but it was felt in some portions of our viewing area. Dana, I'm going to have more on any possible information on aftershocks a little bit later, plus the extended forecast.
And right now on the phone, we have a Dover resident. It's actually the mother of Eyewitness News reporter Greg Argos. Dolores Argaru is joining us by phone. You're a Dover resident, Dolores. What did you feel? What did you experience?
Yes, I actually felt a trembling underground, like I was in my house and it was a loud explosion type sound, and you felt kind of this trembling, maybe no more than 10 seconds, kind of right underground. And I actually thought maybe my furnace had exploded. It was kind of unsettling, and I also had my dog kind of just went crazy barking and running to the door. So it was kind of at that point I realized it was probably a minor earthquake that we had just experienced.
Wow, Dolores, what type of phone calls are you getting from any of your friends? Because I got a Facebook message here from a Valerie in Dover. She said she was stuck in traffic because some roads are closed, but once again, we don't know if that has anything to do with the earthquake or not, or if there's construction. But have you gotten any calls from friends and what they've been saying about what they experienced?
Just pretty much the same, that loud explosion type sound and a trembling underground, but no damage, nothing has fallen off the walls or anything like that. So no damage that I know of or have experienced.
It had to be really scary, though, Dolores. I mean, in this area, we're not used to this kind of occurrence. What went through your mind? I mean, I know you said you thought it may have been something inside your home, but when it continued.
I was startled. Yes, I was startled, and it was very unsettling. It was like not knowing what it was, if it was outside, if it was inside. And I did end up walking down to a neighborhood store, and she said the whole store had rattled. And she was, It was unsettling and nerve-wracking for people, yes.
My dad doesn't live far from you. He said it felt like just a loud clap of thunder. Was it like that for you?
Yes, exactly.
North Korea has launched another missile. Just a short time ago, it announced on state television it has successfully tested a new nuclear-capable intercontinental ballistic missile that could target the entire U.S. mainland. It also says the new missile is significantly more powerful than its previous long-range weapon. The launch comes 1 week after the White House declared North Korea a state sponsor of terrorism.
The Pentagon says North Korea fired an intercontinental ballistic missile like this one from an area north of Pyongyang. It was in the air for some 50 minutes, soaring over 2,300 miles into space before splashing down in the Sea of Japan.
It went higher, frankly, than any previous shot they've taken. It's a research and development effort on their part to continue building ballistic missiles that could threaten everywhere in the world, basically.
Intelligence agencies were anticipating the launch. Japanese government sources said they detected radio signals that suggested North Korea was preparing for a test. North Korea began firing ballistic missiles at a rate of 2 or 3 a month, starting in April. The most recent launch took place 10 weeks ago. President Trump offered a relatively muted response.
I will only tell you that we will take care of it. We have General Mattis in the room with us, and we've had a long discussion on it. it is a situation that we will handle.
According to David Wright from the Union of Concerned Scientists, if the missile had been fired at a standard trajectory, it could have reached any part of the U.S. On Tuesday, officials in Hawaii unveiled a statewide missile warning system.
The focus is to get the public and our visitors as much warning time to prepare as possible.
Hawaii plans to test those new sirens out on Friday.
The U.S., Japan, and South Korea have requested an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council to discuss the test.
The war on Christmas begins. A church ad banned from the D.C. transit system for being too religious. The Archdiocese of Washington now filing a lawsuit to challenge the decision.
Meanwhile, U.S. Vice President Mike Pence says that President Donald Trump is actively considering moving the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Trump had repeatedly promised he would move the embassy to Jerusalem, but he has wavered on that commitment since he took the oath of office. Pence's remarks came yesterday during a speech in New York where he commemorated the historic 1947 UN partition plan vote that split the British Mandate of Palestine into two separate states, ultimately paving the way for the establishment of Israel the following year. Pence will be here in Israel, in Jerusalem, in less than 3 weeks. He'll make a major speech at the parliament. Now, Congress passed a law decades ago making it U.S. policy that the embassy must be moved. But there was a clause added that allowed presidents to delay the decision if it was in America's national security interests. Every president, including Trump 6 months ago, has signed that waiver every 6 months to delay the move. But Trump has to decide once again whether he'll do it come Friday.
As we speak, President Donald Trump is actively considering when and how to move the American embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem.
Good evening. Thousands of Bali tourists are facing a race against time to get home after the Mount Agung ash cloud moved out of the flight path, at least for now. Denpasar Airport reopened this afternoon with the first flights to Perth tomorrow, but the Weather Bureau is warning the favourable conditions may not last.
Bali's biggest volcano is still shooting plumes of ash into the sky, but the winds are finally in tourists' favour. Denpasar Airport reopening just before 3 o'clock this afternoon after the code red warning for air travel was downgraded to orange, the second highest level.
That's a relief, but we still don't know if our flight's leaving tonight though, because there's nothing on the board.
Tonight, most international flights are still grounded. AirAsia has resumed flights to Malaysia, with more expected to take off in the next 24 hours. Jetstar and Qantas have 10 flights scheduled from Bali to Australia tomorrow, with an additional 6 relief flights to get almost 4,000 Australians home. Almost 1,000 flights to and from Bali have been cancelled since the initial eruption last week. Some tourists taking extreme lengths to get off the island, including long bus and ferry rides, before catching flights from other airports.
At the airport, there were just hundreds and hundreds of people lined up for those buses. They were like, it could be a 6-hour wait just for the bus.
We booked another flight from Java, which is a 12-hour bus ride.
Now I'm going to try and get a ticket and go to Surabaya, go to Jakarta and then fly from Jakarta back to Australia.
Weather forecasters say the ash cloud from Mount Agung is moving in a southeasterly direction. Tonight it's heading towards Lombok, leaving the flight path to Denpasar Airport clear. But a cyclone near Java could see winds change quickly, with the Bureau constantly monitoring conditions.
Last day of it, guys. Tracking the tropics and everything is quiet, so we like that. Your hurricane season recap, if you will. It's been a very busy season. I'd say most of us, can't speak for everyone out there, but I'd say most of us are happy that hurricane season is ending today after being above average in all categories. We had 17 named storms. You usually see around 12, so you can see that is above average. 10 of those named storms made it to hurricane status, and of those 10 hurricanes, 6 made it to major hurricane status. A major hurricane is a category 3 or above, and you can see that doubled what we normally see. So So very active hurricane season finally ending today.
President Trump's Twitter habit is putting a new strain on the U.S. relationship with its closest ally. The president retweeted inflammatory anti-Muslim messages yesterday, including misleading videos posted by a far-right British group. That drew rare criticism from a spokesman for Prime Minister Theresa May. Mr. Trump pushed back last night with a tweet saying, "Don't focus on me." Major Garrett is at the White House. Major, good morning.
Good morning. President Trump is urging Senate Republicans to stay focused and approve as soon as they can corporate and personal tax cuts. But the president undercut that message and abandoned his own focus by inflaming political passions in Britain by giving Twitter endorsements to a far-right nationalist party there.
Together, we will give the American people a big, beautiful Christmas present.
President Trump used ornamental language to pitch tax cuts. But the president's morning retweets of 3 anti-immigrant, anti-Muslim posts by an extreme right-fringe party in Britain brought charges of racism and disapproval from the British Prime Minister. One tweet claims to show video of Muslim extremists throwing a boy off a roof, but it turned out to be a fight between rival political factions in Egypt. Another tweet is captioned "A Muslim migrant beating up a Dutch boy on crutches," but the attacker was revealed to be Dutch-born, not an immigrant. Without defending the videos, Press Secretary Sarah Sanders pointed to a general threat of Islamic terrorism.
Whether it's a real video, the threat is real, and that is what the president is talking about.
Through a spokesman, Prime Minister Theresa May called the retweets wrong. Trump last night responded to May. "Don't focus on me. Focus on the destructive radical Islamic terrorism that is taking place within the United Kingdom. We are doing just fine." If one Führer was not enough, Mr. Trump also tweeted wow when he learned about NBC's firing of Today Show host Matt Lauer over allegations of sexual misconduct.
Grab him by the
And one Republican said behind the scenes the president may also be trying to talk himself or others into questioning the authenticity of the now infamous Access Hollywood tape.
Surfing the internet could soon become even faster thanks to world-first technology being developed right here in Australia, delivering speeds 20 times faster than the NBN is capable of. The breakthrough allows users to download movies in under a second.
Outside this nondescript Gold Coast telephone exchange, things are pretty quiet. But inside, data's moving at world record pace.
2,000 megabits per second and still going up. And still going up.
That's 100 times faster than most Australian internet connections, 20 times faster than the highest NBN speed. But there's more to come.
It can go twice as fast again. It'll like in a couple of weeks' time, when we upgrade the software, it'll be running at 5 gigabits per second.
At that speed, you'll be able to download an entire 2-hour movie in under a second. But that's not all. In the future, towers such as this one will carry the 5G signal and usher in a whole new era of technology, including drones that will be able to send high-quality pictures back to Earth from places currently inaccessible. And to think, this is all Australian technology. The world-first breakthrough between Telstra and Ericsson is to make a 5G call at a higher radio frequency than ever before, 26 megahertz.
And what that allows us to do is to make many more calls at higher speeds and for more customers to enjoy that high speed.
This speed and the capacity for more users with more data is a key for driverless cars, remote robotic surgery, precise industrial control. Imagine watching the Melbourne Cup live via a 360-degree camera on a jockey's helmet.
You're now riding with a jockey. You look around, you see who's behind you, who's in front of you, you can hear the thunder of the hooves.
But first, they'll have to make this experimental mobile phone a wee bit smaller. In the next few years, this will boil down to that.
Yes. It takes a while to refine the silicon on the new technologies.
The hope is the technology and the 5G handsets will be available in 3 to 4 years' time.
The mayor of a small German town has been stabbed in the neck by a man who objected to his refugee policy. The official survived after being treated for serious wounds. RT's Peter Oliver picks up the story.
Well, this attack took place in the small western German town of Altena. It's a town that's taken in more refugees than were asked of it from central government here in Berlin. Its mayor, Andreas Holstein, who was the target of this attack, has spoken out publicly in the past about the need for German towns and for his town in particular to do more for refugees. Well, he was at a food stall in the town when a man came up behind him and attacked him. Thankfully, he was okay enough to be able to give this interview afterwards.
When he approached me, he looked aggressive. He asked me whether I was the mayor, and I said yes. Then he pulled out a knife, saying, "You let me starve, but you let 200 refugees into our city." I really feared for my life. I was scared that I hadn't just been wounded, but that I might die. But then I was rescued.
Certainly quite understated from the mayor just there, but when we listened to first responders who were on the scene, we realised this could have been much worse.
The attacker asked the mayor whether he was the mayor, then pulled out a knife, put him in a headlock and tried to cut right through his throat. I ran over there and shouted at him to let the man go. I asked him to calm down, but he didn't stop. So I grabbed his arms and went for his knife, and with my father's help, we managed to get hold of it.
Judging by what he said, he was a German citizen who objected to our mayor's migrant policies. He asked, "Are you the mayor?" To which the mayor replied, "Yes." And then he asked, "How can you feed the refugees here while we are starving?" So he can't be a refugee. He must be a German citizen.
Eyewitnesses told German media that the man appeared to be intoxicated and that he was shouting about Andreas Holstein's policies on refugees.
The prosecution's appeal.
The final hours of a UN War Crimes Tribunal and a moment of drama.
Judges, Slobodan Praljak is not a war criminal. I am rejecting your judgment.
Slobodan Praljak, one of 6 former Bosnian Croat leaders appealing against a guilty verdict, declared he was not a war criminal and then drank poison. His death was announced several hours later. Security at The Hague is now being scrutinized, and an investigation underway into how a defendant was able to obtain a poison to kill himself with. Earlier, Praljak's 20-year prison sentence, handed down 4 years ago, was upheld. The former commander of Bosnian Croat forces had been convicted of crimes against humanity, failing to act on information that the murders of Bosnian Muslims were planned, and being involved in the destruction of the city's historic old bridge and mosques. Experts say his death will have an impact on relations between powers in the region.
Well, it's going to have a huge impact. Certainly when Milosevic died before the end of his trial, victims didn't feel as though justice was served because he was never held accountable. This is slightly different. He's been convicted and his conviction's been maintained on appeal. But of course it's going to be rather hollow justice that he's now taken his life and is not going to spend the next 20 or so years in prison for his crimes.
Praljak was one of 6 former Bosnian Croat political military leaders due to hear the court's rulings on their appeals. And the death has overshadowed confirmation of the conviction of the highest-ranking Bosnian Croat official from the 1992-1995 war in the Balkans. Jadranko Prilic, the former prime minister of the Croat statelet of Herceg-Bosna, watched impassively as the judges turned down his appeal and confirmed a 25-year prison term. Judges also upheld a 20-year term for former defense minister Bruno Stojic. All had been convicted in 2013 of prosecuting, forcibly expelling and murdering Muslims during Bosnia's war. Croatia denounced the war crimes findings that former President Franjo Tuđman and other leaders participated in a plan to carve out a Croat mini-state in Bosnia during the war.
In light of all stated, the government will consider available legal and political mechanisms to question certain statements from today's judgment.
The hearing was the last judgment by the International Criminal Tribunal for the former